listening to the Project Ignite podcast,
where real digital entrepreneurs reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies to help you ignite and grow your online business.
ProjectIgnite.com. Your digital business starts here.
Now, here's your host, Derek Gale.
Welcome to the Project Ignite podcast, a podcast that just skips the hype, skips the BS, brings you real entrepreneurs who are doing real stuff. We're going to share how they're doing it so you can learn from them and apply it to your business. This is your host, Derek Gale, and today we're going to be diving deep into Amazon, selling on Amazon. And look, there's no denying Amazon has changed the world forever, particularly over the last year and a half. And whether you love them or hate them, and on any given day, I'm not sure where I sit, they do represent a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs around the world. But like everything with the internet, Amazon is evolving and changing rapidly. And what worked just a few years ago probably isn't working today. And so that's what I want to dig into in this episode. How can you make money on Amazon in 2021? And our guest today is an Amazon expert. And I mean, this guy's been a serial entrepreneur since 1983. So he almost predates internet here. And that said, in his career, he's built numerous 6, 7, and 8-figure businesses. And today, his core business is generating 8 figures per year selling on Amazon. He's also recently published his first book, The Amazon Code, and has a couple more in the works, including How to Become a Virtual CEO and The Entrepreneur Mindset, Step 1. He's also the co-founder of Expert University, where he's written over 50 training programs for entrepreneurs looking to earn money in legitimate long-term online businesses. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Todd Snively to the show. Todd, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Derek. It's truly my privilege.
Well, look, okay, so you've been at this for a while. Give me your entrepreneurial Coles Notes journey and how you got to, I mean, obviously an entrepreneur in 1983. I mean, before we started, you said, you remember the days of direct mail, stuff like that, to today where you're now doing this Amazon stuff. Give me the condensed version here.
The condensed version is it all started because I didn't want to work for somebody else. That was one thing I had figured out early on in life, is that I didn't want to be an employee. Mm-hmm. The problem was we grew up poor, relatively poor. And I didn't know what having wealth was, how you got it. There was no money courses going on. So I just kind of had to figure everything out on my own. And I went to every type of training I could find back then, and there was not a lot. It was mostly magazines. We were reading Business Opportunity and things like, Home Business Magazine, and trying to figure out how to, get past the hucksters back then, which isn't any easier today. But I started my very first business, and after about a year, I was able to sell it. It was kind of a crazy thing that happened, and I found myself with this chunk of change, and I had to decide, well, what do I want to do next? Do I want to try another business, or do I want to go after something I thought I really wanted? Because people ask me all the time, they're like, "Have you ever had a real job?" And I've actually I've had two. Okay. One, I was in the Air Force. I was in the United States Air Force. Came out and started that first business. When I sold that, I decided to take the money and finish my pilot training. I had been a private pilot since I was 17. I had actually had soloed a plane before I had my driver's license. My sister used to have to drive me to the airport to take my lessons. So I thought I wanted to be a professional pilot. And that's one of the reasons I went into the Air Force, but my eyes kind of failed me after a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I took the money and I finished all my training, and I actually flew as a freight, I call it a freight dog, under contract for the post office and UPS. And I did that for about a year back in 1988. And what I learned was that thing they say about if you want to love your work, do what you love, that's nonsense.
Totally. Yeah.
They took something I loved and they just beat the snot out of it. And I made, at the top of my career, flying a large airplane all at night in between tornadoes and things like that, I made $28,000. All right.
So, oh my God, risking your life.
I had 3 major engine failures, during this part of my career. And I said, I thought I was dead on the first one. I said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And so I turned my sights back to entrepreneurial activities and making money. Well, we hit some really interesting trends along the way. And I don't know how far you want to go down this rabbit hole, but people will ask me every now and then, what was my favorite business? And by far, it was the one that I started in 1989, right after the flying thing. And it was a 900 number company.
Mm-hmm.
And I know if you're old enough, you're probably thinking right now, had sex lines or
heavy breathing. Yep.
All this 900 number, and this beautiful woman will whisper sweet nothings in your ear for $5 a minute. I actually saw one of those commercials about 2 a.m, laying in bed watching TV. I saw that commercial, my very first 900 number commercial. And I said to myself, who gets that $5 a minute? It wasn't like I want to call and talk to this woman. It was like, who gets this money? And so I went on a journey to figure that out. And I actually started a 900 number business where the phone company is charging for these calls, and they're acting as your billing service. You don't need a credit card merchant company. They collected the money and sent it to you, but they would only do it for information. So we started some informational programs and eventually evolved into, I'll give you an example. Let's say I had a fishing lure that I wanted to sell, right? I would say, this is the latest and greatest brand new fishing lure in the world. Call 1-900 blah, blah, blah. The cost of the call is $19.99. But just for calling, and we're going to tell you all about this fishing lure, just for calling, we'll send you the lure absolutely free. So they paid for the information, but we sent them the product.
Smart. Yeah.
And it worked great. I mean, we grew huge, that business. And we ended up turning ourselves into what was called a service bureau, which we were training. That was the very first training program I ever wrote, was how to use 900 numbers way back in the day. And we would teach people how to develop these programs. And then we would host the program on our equipment as a service bureau and receive 5 cents a minute for every minute of their traffic as our fee. That business was the right place, right time, because everybody was using it for sex. And we were out there now able to do TV commercials that you could put anywhere. We developed a circuit board, the very first one, I had a patent on this, that would do real-time call redirect. So people would dial the 900 number, and then they would be redirected to a live person, because we developed 1-900 info law, where for $5 a minute, you could talk to an attorney and ask them any type of legal question. So those were the kinds of programs that we were doing. And it all came to an end with deregulation, and we weren't able to do national billing agreements anymore, and the rules were changing. And so it kind of coincided with the birth of my first daughter in 92. And we just decided to take a breather.
Well, we're living in. It's funny listening to this. I mean, a lot of these business models have evolved and they're back again. I mean, you go online and pay X amount to talk to a lawyer. You were just and it's funny when I talk to the old school direct response guys, because I mean, when we started online in the late 90s, that's who we were learning from, is the Dan Kennedys of the world and the old school direct response guys, and just taking and making that stuff work. And it's interesting now to see, even as it evolves, a lot of this direct response, a lot of those business models are just evolving with the technology.
I look at a website landing page and I'm thinking full page ad in a magazine.
Totally.
I mean, like you said, everything that is old is now new with just a different tech spin. And it's just amazing how that happens. But I still feel old. I mean, it still makes me old.
Experienced is the word you were looking for.
I do remember the internet when it popped around. I do remember getting on there and playing with the little DOS commands and trying to get into Cambridge University's library on, and it was all text-based. So back then, the only people making money were selling books and porn. That's the only way to make money.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. So what brought you to internet? What was your first internet business?
Oh, dude, this is kind of a sad story, to be honest with you. One of the things that, how do I say this? I tell people I have generated $100 million since 1983.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it the hard way. I did 50 million up until 2002. I lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did another 50 million since 2002. It was like
Okay.
the phoenix, rising from the ashes.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, I look back on that whole experience right now. When you're going through something like that,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just don't want to get out of bed in the morning. You're like, what's the point? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And with hindsight, you can look back and say, well, you know what? That was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because all of the success that we had, I kind of grew up. Now we're going to get to the point where doing podcasts like this is cheaper than therapy for me.
Nice.
When I was growing up, I said we grew up poor. We didn't have a lot of money. And so it was really important to me back in the 80s and the 90s that people saw me as a success. So I was the guy putting in 70, 80 hours a week trying to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, I had, the whole thing going on with the things up on the wall. I always wanted a Rolex. I always wanted a Corvette. I always wanted the big house, pictures up on the wall. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is you can go too far down that road when you start to care more about what people think of you.
Yeah.
Because it makes making the hard decisions almost impossible. And I got faced with a hard decision at one point, business-wise, where I really needed to close down, restructure, not go bankrupt, but kind of hit the reset button.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't man enough to do it. I was always thinking, oh, what will so-and-so think? Oh, what will all of these other people think? Well, what do people now who I don't give a rat's butt about, what would they think about me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a real problem, and it caused me to make some bad decisions. So I ended up operating in, I had a really large company at the time, doing a couple of $1 million a month, all right? And it was a large commodity brokerage firm. And I ended up operating in some gray areas. I had like 9 different types of licenses. It's a highly regulated federal industry. And I went to my lawyer one day with an entrepreneurial idea to make money. And he kind of looked at me funny and said, I don't know. He goes, maybe I'd have to look into it. And it was my arrogance and everything that said, nope, I'm going to do it. And I'm thinking worst case scenario, and this is where you get irrational thinking that'll going to screw your life up every time. Oh, worst case scenario, they'll tell me I can't do this and I'll get a $10,000 fine and I'll just change the way I'm doing business. And no, that's not what happened at all. There was not even a discussion like that. When the auditors came into my office one day and they sat down and they go, we don't think you can do this the way you're doing it. It ended that day. I shut the business down, and eventually they came in. That's kind of a long story. And it was the time of Martha Stewart and Steve Madden, and they were just looking to prosecute these high dollar, white collar type things. And that was, I shut that business down in February of 2002. And then that was when I first started selling online, was March of 2002. So I built this multi-million dollar online business because I had to. Okay. When I shut that other business down, I was 2.2 million in debt. They wanted my house. They wanted all my money. They wanted me to basically reverse the last 6 months of business. And I was 2.2 million in debt. So here I am signing over my house, and I had no idea what I was going to do for income. I just happened to be at lunch with a friend, and he's eating his tuna salad sandwich, and he says, "Oh, why don't you try selling on eBay?" I said, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to ever do that." I'm driving home, and I'm thinking, I don't have anything else. I'm in like post-traumatic stress right now. My brain is really not functioning. So I went home and I walked around my house and I saw all this stuff laying around that I didn't care about anymore. Okay. And I said, well, let me try selling what I have laying around on eBay. And it all went fast, and it all went for more money than I thought it would. And so I said, okay, I just have to figure out how to systematize this and expand it. Because I didn't want to go bankrupt. I wanted to pay my debts, rebuild a business that was legitimate and long-term, and never come under the scrutiny of the federal government again.
Yes.
So that was March 2002. by March 2003, we had done 1.1 million in revenue on eBay at incredibly high margins. And about a year later, I got the bad news. It was around 2004. My lawyer called me up and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, the federal government wants to charge you with something or other. They're not sure yet, but they want to make sure you know." I'm already down this new road of my life. I'm paying lawyers, I'm paying restitution, I'm doing everything I can, and they come back and say, "No, we need some prison time out of you." I'm like, "Oh man!" And there was just no way out of it. They were just dead set. So I ended up in January of 2005, I pled guilty, straight up guilty, no plea deal or nothing, to one count of mail fraud. And they sentenced me in August of 2005. And it only took about 2 or 3 minutes, but it was a 5-year sentence, 60 months. Yeah. So here I am in August of 2005 going, oh my God. Because everybody's telling me, oh yeah, maybe probation, house arrest for a couple of months. This wasn't a big deal. Oh no, 60 months. So we ended up selling the business again because I didn't want to have to worry about that, being gone so long. So we sold the business, and that's basically what my wife lived off of while I was away. And I actually did 3 years, 3 days in a federal prison camp. And when I got out, there was a little halfway house time and then some home confinement for a few months. And as soon as I got out, though, I started the eBay business up again. That would have been December 2008. And I discovered Amazon in 2009. And like they say, the rest is history. And that's why I look back and say it was a mistake, but I learned from it. It changed me 180 degrees. It fixed thinking. My mindset has never been sharper. Now I would never wish that experience on anybody, but I talk to people all day long that actually need that mindset button pushed, the reset button, but they don't want to go through the pain that's required for them to get their mind straight so that they can be successful in these types of endeavors.
Yeah.
So while it was the worst thing that anybody could have ever have gone through, it was what had to happen. Something had to happen, or it would have been worse for me. It would have been a bigger crash eventually. So it was bad enough that it took that long. But so that's why I say 100 million the hard way. I would.
Wow. What an absolutely crazy story. And, I mean, to back to what you were saying, I think, it's funny. I've taught entrepreneurs now for 20 years while I've been building my own businesses. And, in the early days of teaching entrepreneurs, I'd get right into the tactics and the strategies and stuff like that. But, I think the reason most people don't succeed as entrepreneurs has nothing to do with their strategy or their business idea. It has entirely to do with their mindset. And
1,000%.
They're just not thinking the right way. And one of the things that you said earlier on there about, being afraid to make the hard decisions because you were worried about what everybody would think about you. That fear is probably the fear that stops so many people from ever even making the step into entrepreneurship. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? And, I always find it interesting, to talk. Look, when I meet entrepreneurs like you or myself, where we've been through ups and we've been through downs, it's that experience that creates the ability to have longevity as an entrepreneur. I see young guys that they start up and everything's been perfect for them, but no business is perfect for forever. And there's always going to be downs. And you got to wait and see, okay, how are they going to perform when the chips are down? And will they make it through that? And if they can make it through the chips down, then they may have a chance over the long term.
One of my first mentors said to me, it was one of the most important things anybody ever said to me. He said, you're either in a bad situation, you're headed for a bad situation, or you just left a bad situation. This cycle will repeat itself. throughout your life. He goes, and it's how you handle yourself
Sure.
in between each of those situations that will determine the quality and happiness of your life.
Yeah.
And some people think it's always going to be unicorns and rainbows all the time.
Oh, no.
That's not the case. When you're an entrepreneur, it's one fire after the other in many instances, right?
Yep.
And that if your mindset isn't right. And here, what really grinds me is people that need that message the most are the first to dismiss it, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so hey, I just bought into your program. Let's start making money. Well, let's go through some mindset training first. Fuck that, he says. Just show me how to make money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh, no. I think that's going to go poorly. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, a fascinating story. And, it's interesting. I mean, you're the second guest I've had on the show now that has gone through a journey that has ended up with a prison sentence, but has come back out of that stronger. And
someone else asked me once. They said, "Well, what would you say your biggest natural gift is?" And I says, "Well, I don't know if it's natural, but I would have to say it's resiliency." And that's something else that entrepreneurs really need.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't like giving up or failing. Obviously, we fail quite a bit personally and professionally, but the resilient person gets back up and tries it again.
Sure.
I've seen so many people hit that first road bump, that first speed bump, and they're like, this doesn't work. I'm done. You know, and they go right back to digging ditches, which is fine.
Yeah.
But if you don't have a little bit of a thick skin or some resilience to you, this world will eat you alive. And
I always tell people, you've got to change how you perceive failure and look at it as part of the journey. And what did you take away from it so that you are, one step closer now to doing it the right way? And that is what we do as entrepreneurs. We fail over and over and over trying to find the thing that's going to be the home run. And I mean, it's the whole Thomas Edison, right? I haven't failed. I just found 10,000 ways it didn't work, right? And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
It's interesting you said that, because people confuse pivoting with shiny object syndrome. And the difference is when you pick a path and you hit an obstacle, sometimes you have to go left or right. You pivot, you go up, down, you go through it or whatever, right? But when you start a venture and it starts to get difficult and you say to yourself mentally, oh, this is hard. My brain is hurting a little bit. And then the next email in your inbox is like, hey, push button riches, millions of dollars fall from the sky. And you're like, oh, that sounds easier. Let me try that. That's shiny object syndrome.
Yes.
And the people that succumb to that shiny object syndrome wonder why why they're not successful. And then everything becomes a scam. There's no legitimate way to make money online. I've tried everything. No, you haven't.
Yes, exactly.
You've spent a lot of money and done nothing in many attempts, but you haven't really tried what you're supposed to do.
I mean, I've met those people over my career that they get the dopamine hit from buying the system, and they feel like they're doing something.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and they're never doing it. Yeah, but beyond that, they never do it. I'll tell you funny story. This is going back, my God, must have been 15 years now. And I was doing a live event, and it was down in Orange County, and I had one of my training programs for sale and had all the software and all the stuff with it. And so, during the event, this one gentleman went up to the sales table and said, yeah, I want to enroll and I want to buy it. And my then CFO, who's actually now my wife, she was talking to this guy, and he took his name and, entered it into our system. We had a customer record for him. And she's like, sir, you bought all of this last year. You don't need this. You have it. And he says to her, you know what? He says, I need to pay for it again, so I actually do something with it.
Oh my goodness.
And it's like, that's not the solution.
No. I don't know where people get this idea, to your point, that actually purchasing training materials is doing anything.
Yeah.
Those are the people that once they start, and that's when their brain starts to hurt. They're like, oh, wait a
Yeah.
minute, this is work. And once it's perceived as work, they're out. And
Yep.
there's not a lot you can do for those kind of people, because when they buy mindset type training programs, they do the exact same thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a friend that likes to say, if Tony Robbins was really so effective, there'd be like billionaires walking around. You'd be running into a billionaire all the time, you know?
Well, yeah. And I mean, look, and that's the problem with the Tony Robbins stuff is people go to those events. And I know people that have been successful and they've gotten stuff, but they're the small percentage. Those are the people that would also buy my training and do something with it. The problem is people go to the Tony Robbins events and stuff like that. They feel great. They get a big burst out of it, but then they go back to reality, and reality is a bitch. and they don't keep that momentum going. So, guy, I could talk about this mindset stuff all day because I think it's so important, but I want to get into that. I want to dig into the Amazon stuff here because look, Amazon is it's a juggernaut. It's changing the world. I think I said earlier, I have a love-hate relationship with it on numerous levels, right? Like, I mean, I hate what they've done to retail business and they've used public money to effectively change buyer behavior while losing money all the way along. But on the flip side, I go out trying to buy something and I look everywhere to get it. And the only people that can have it to me tomorrow is Amazon, and they'll do it at half the price.
It's funny because you and I, this is the first time we've met, but I think we would get along just fine and enjoy a beer together or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But this reminds me of, like, I don't know if you remember, Hugh Hefner got arrested for putting out an obscene publication back in the 60s, I think it was, in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And the basic argument was, if you don't like the magazine, don't friggin' buy it.
Yeah.
And I tell people the same thing. They go, well, you're a seller on Amazon. Well, you're what's wrong with this world. Don't you know how bad Amazon is? I'm like, if you don't like Amazon, don't use it.
Don't buy from it. Yeah. Well, and that's it. People are voting with their wallets. They're saying one thing and doing the other. And I'm just calling myself out on it because I'm that guy. I'm like, damn you, Amazon, take my money. Because they're really good at what they do.
Because as a seller, and I'm going to go back to one real quick other thing. When I got in trouble in 2001, I had anger issues back then because I really felt I was being treated unfairly.
Sure.
And then one day I woke up and I had this epiphany, and the epiphany was earth shattering to me. People listening may go, well, that was stupid. But to me, I said to myself, you know what? I'm angry because of what they did to me. But if I hadn't done what I did, they wouldn't have had the chance to treat me the way they're treating me. I took ownership all of a sudden of all of this. Okay. Well, the people that, especially sellers, all right, sellers get mad at Amazon all the time.
Yeah.
They don't like sellers. They don't treat sellers fairly. They took my business away from me. Well, here's the thing. Okay. Once you understand Amazon really only cares about the customer, okay, you can lose all that anger and understand it's a customer-centric business. Do they care about their employees? That's a different debate. Don't want to have it. All right. That's a class I'm not going to sign up for. All right. Do they like unions? Hey, there's another class I'm not going to sign up for. Okay. Somebody else can go argue about that kind of
totally.
class.
Yeah.
The bottom line is Amazon is an innovative company that is actually going to do a lot of good. All right. When I started with Amazon selling it, they had 6 fulfillment warehouses around the country. I've lost track now. It's got to be around 200. Do you know how many people they're employing, what they're doing for the local governments or the local economy? All right. So I don't even want to talk about that side of it, because if Amazon was truly evil, right, that'll eventually come out and they'll get dealt with. And I don't think it's the case. What happens is when you're the big gorilla, right, when you're the king of the mountain, you're the only one to shoot arrows at.
Well, and that's it. And I mean, they're probably one of the most innovative. I mean, what Jeff Bezos has done, he is a freaking genius. I mean, what did they hire last year? Like 500,000 people in the U.S. Like that, it's unheard of what they did. It's
brand new. They created brand new jobs. Well, a lot of that was because COVID related. But the funny thing is nobody's been laid off.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because of what happened with e-commerce. Prior to COVID, e-commerce accounted for maybe 15% of the total retail transactions in the United States. COVID hits, and a few months later, it's 27% of all retail transactions. Well, you need some bodies to handle that. And people were like, well, when COVID goes away, isn't it going to go back to 15%?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
It didn't happen because people enjoyed buying online who had never bought online before. Right?
Yep.
And we talk about now the survival of the fittest. Oh, e-commerce has put a lot of brick and mortars out of business. I'm okay with that, and here's why. Should we still be using and buying buggy whips right now? You know, when the car was invented back in the day, when the buggy whip manufacturers were like, cars bad, we're going to lose our business. Anybody think like that now? No, because in hindsight, you're like, yeah, well, that had to happen.
Sure.
So you can't have so much tunnel vision and be so short-sighted to say we have to stop these brick and mortars from going out of business. Well, how about the brick and mortars go online? Why don't they pivot like entrepreneurs pivot? Right? Now, it's not actually that easy. I understand that. You know, maybe they have a building they bought that they're going to be stuck with. They have employees. I know it's complicated, but the bottom line is this writing has been on the wall for many years.
Sure.
And the businesses that pivoted, got online, or even just sold out and went and did something completely different. Yeah, they're doing fine. It's the ones that stick around that don't want to change that'll eventually be eminent domained out of existence. If you
And it was all going to happen. It was all going to happen. It just happened a hell of a lot faster than we thought it was going to happen, right? We bounced a decade forward in a year.
Yeah, 7 years of growth happened in a period of 3 months.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Commerce business. Oh my! I had one of our members. One of her products is aloe vera lotion, and out of the blue, she calls me up one day. She goes, "I might have a problem." I said, "Why?" She says, "Well, I was selling 200 units a day of this. Now I'm selling 2,000." I said, well, "That's a good problem."
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know why. And we did a little checking and found out aloe vera is an ingredient in homemade hand sanitizer.
Yes.
And so everybody was making their own hand sanitizer at home. All the aloe vera got bought up. So I mean, you can be in the right place at the right time, have nothing to do with anything other than these. I had it happen too. Oprah mentions a product on her show, and boom, right through the roof it goes.
Yeah, away it goes. Yeah, look, I mean, if I had to narrow down my issues, I mean, I agree. Writing was on the wall for what it's done to retail. It just happened a heck of a lot faster. That sucks for people, but that was the evolution that was going to take place. My issues with Amazon are, and I think this is for the tech industry as a whole, is we've got a couple big players that are way too dominant, and that dominance is going to hamper future innovation and disruptors that create, interesting change, right? Facebook, Google, they control way too much of the ad market now. Amazon's a behemoth. Where does that lead us to? I mean, the whole economy was built on, being able to have a healthy competitive environment, and our monopoly laws, and I say I'm Canadian, but the US monopoly laws haven't caught up to, I think, with where we exist today. And, my other issue with Amazon is, and I mean, Bezos basically admitted this when he was in front of the, who was it? The Senate hearing, when they said, do you use your data to decide what businesses you're going to go, what products you're going to develop? And he said, no, we have policies against that. And they said, well, can you guarantee? And he said, no, we can't. And my issue is they're going from being a platform now to being their own brands and manufacturers. And that's a pisser when you're a brand and, you're kicking ass. And next thing you know, Amazon's now selling the same products on your platform. And no matter what they say, they're going to give themselves preference. That's my thoughts on it. Those are my beefs with Amazon. I mean, what do you think?
I actually love that you brought that up.
Okay.
I've actually had this. I've been a paid consultant to Amazon at various times over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah.
And it's very, very interesting to go into the inner sanctum of Amazon and see how things operate inside there. The company is so big, the left hand 99% of the time doesn't know what the right hand is.
And that's it. That's the kicker. So
yeah. So I sat with senior vice presidents and I asked those exact questions way before a congressional hearing, right? And he said, no, we have no way would we do that. Then I would end up talking with some manager of a small department with a tiny programming team. And they're like, yeah, we'll go out and study other sellers, you know, and if they're doing really good, we'll go and get something manufactured and call it Amazon Basics. I said, well, do you know, I just met with so-and-so and he said that you guys aren't supposed to be doing that. Yeah. And you know what this guy said to me, who actually admitted to me that they did that? He said, we're exercising initiative on our own. And I said, and you don't have to get permission from like 9 floors up to do something like that? He goes, everybody has a lot of autonomy. Yeah. I said, but you understand though, that what you're doing is just fundamentally wrong, you know? And they don't see it that way because what did I say initially? Their focus is the customer, not the sellers, not the brand owners. They're as bad as China sometimes, I think, when it comes to intellectual property. I'll give you another perfect example of the dysfunction within Amazon. I know we're going down. I love this particular rabbit hole, though. One of the things I was selling back in the day was pesticides, all right, pest control products, high-end chemicals that usually only exterminators could get. But it was legal to sell. I didn't need a license to buy it. But the problem is these chemicals were restricted in certain states. And the big states were New York, Connecticut, and I think Vermont. California to a smaller extent, believe it or not, but New York was the bad one. So I wouldn't send these chemicals down to FBA because Amazon will ship them anywhere. Yeah. They didn't care. They just don't recognize state laws, period. Okay. Yeah. And so I said, I'm not going to do that. If I get an order in from New York, I'm just going to cancel it. Now, I was at the time the only third-party seller selling these chemicals because they were very difficult to get. But on Amazon, when somebody sees a product that does really well and there's one seller, they'll go and try to find supply and become a competitor. And the next thing I know, within a year, there's a few people that did send these chemicals down to FBA. And I knew for a fact that they were being sent anywhere, right? And I don't know if I should say this out loud or not, but I'm going to say it anyway. So what I did, it really pissed me off. I said, this isn't right. So what I did was I would order from those sellers and have a shipping address sent to the director of the Environmental Protection Agency in New York. So after my name. So after a while, and it didn't take long, by the way, after a while, the EPA started to bring these lawsuits against Amazon saying you're allowing these products from your warehouse to be shipped to restricted states. Sure. And it cost Amazon a lot of money. I can't remember how much the final number was, but then that's when they came out and restricted the pesticides now. And it turned into a huge thing. I cannot even begin to tell you how that little pebble in the water rippled into a tsunami. Yeah. But that's how Amazon is sometimes. They just you gotta take them and smack them on the nose with a newspaper and say, don't do that.
That's the problem with even like counterfeit right now. So I've got a brand where we're spending a lot of money, close to $5,000-6,000 a day on paid media, and as you build a brand, a few weeks ago I noticed one of our media spend started to drop off a bit, and what is going on? And this is a brand I've kept it off Amazon entirely. And lo and behold, somebody has taken and counterfeited the brand and made it look like the brand. And it's a supplement that isn't even allowed to be sold on Amazon. They've gamed the system and are now selling this product as counterfeit on Amazon. And you know how hard it is to get Amazon to take something like that down? I mean, it takes weeks. And they just don't. And this goes back to what you said, is they're a freaking juggernaut. They're massive, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
And again, I'm really not here to defend Amazon. Amazon can defend themselves how they want, but they do come out with programs to address a lot of these things. Are you aware of the transparency program? that they have?
No.
And I'm not saying that this would help your situation, but all right. So let's say the situation is you are on Amazon. You have the brand, your Blue Widget Company
Sure.
brand on Amazon, and you're selling blue widgets, authentic blue widgets.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, traditionally, what happens is some goofball goes to a factory in China, and they copy your blue widget and send it in on your blue widget listing. That is a textbook counterfeit product violating your intellectual property. So what Amazon did is they came up with something called the transparency program, where you as a brand put this barcode on each of your products. It's an additional barcode, and that product is identified in their database as in the transparency program. So any one of your blue widgets now that comes into an Amazon warehouse, they go to look to scan the transparent barcode, and if it's not on there,
Right.
they don't put it into the ecosystem. So things like that, does that take a while for them to come up with?
And look, I'm honestly, I'm not even necessarily pissed off at Amazon on this one. It's just, anything getting done there can be difficult. And I'm more choked at the company that's doing this, and it's a company out of China. And this is not our first rodeo with counterfeit. It happens all the time. But yeah, okay. So let's get out of this rabbit hole, because I enjoy these rabbit holes. But let's get to Amazon. The state of selling on Amazon today. I mean, we were talking before we started recording, and I was kind of griping about, when I'm doing events around Asia and stuff like that in Australia over the last few years, I see all these other events, Amazon autopilot riches BS, plug into a drop shipper and just go list the products, and, the cash will flow in. And I'm going to call bullshit on that stuff. I mean, I don't know where you sit on that, but what is working today?
See, when they hear, oh, I sell on Amazon, they think there's like only one way to sell on Amazon, and there's not. Okay. But there's really, in my mind, and it's my position, and I'll argue this against anybody, there's only one real right way. Okay. Now, what you're doing is called private label, right? There's nothing wrong with creating a private label brand and being a private label seller on Amazon, which is where you invent a product. You're an inventor, right? You invented a new product, you brought it to market, and you're going to distribute it through Amazon's marketplace. Nothing wrong with that. However, when people come to me and say, I have limited resources, limited experience, what's the best way to sell on Amazon to start with that has the lowest risk and the best return? It's not private label. Private label is my second choice. Okay. My first choice is wholesale distribution. And wholesale now, but before we go into wholesale distribution heavy, let me just say that drop shipping is a scam and is in a lot of ways not even allowed on Amazon. It's against terms of service if it's done wrong, which it usually is. And arbitrage, retail arbitrage and online arbitrage are also two things that are very iffy. And I don't believe real true businesses that you can scale and have any longevity with. And this latest scam is called Amazon automation, where, some future federal prisoner says to you, hey, give me $35,000 or $50,000 and I'll do everything for you. You set up the Amazon account, then give me your credit card number, and my team will buy all the products, load up your store, it'll sell. We'll make a bazillions. We'll do it together. You go lay on a beach. Bullshit. And I'll call anybody out there that wants to go head to head with me on this. If you're promoting Amazon automation, you are a con man, and you are doing a grave disservice to anybody that comes into that program. It is complete and total garbage. There was one guy, his name was Stephen Mayer, and he ran a company called Valiant Consulting. And he was initially a drop shipper, and then he saw the lure of big money with Amazon automation. So he switched from one scam to another, completely fraud, 100% fraud. And he took anywhere from, the number is in dispute, anywhere from 30 to 50 million from people giving him 35,000 or 50,000, right? He took that money from those people and he disappeared. But he didn't really disappear. He went to another fraudster whose name I really can't mention because this guy is very litigious. And the only way he stays around is by suing people that mention his name the way I'm about to, not his name, but what he does. And Stephen Mayer basically went to this guy and said, I'm going to show you how to do this. Use my infrastructure. Just get out there and be the face. So the scam just went from one guy
to
another. Amazon automation. Stay away from it. There's only one right way to do Amazon automation, and that's yourself. And it starts with wholesale distribution. They have basically bastardized and prostituted the wholesale distribution model.
So, okay, let's talk about the wholesale distribution model. So, I mean, we've talked about obviously Amazon automation, stay well away from it, private labeling, kind of drop shipping, which again, it doesn't sound like you're a fan of. So what is wholesale distribution and how is that different?
Wholesale distribution is where you purchase name brand products that are already selling profitably on Amazon that need additional competitive sellers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the model. All right. So that leads to a lot of explanation. Right?
Yes.
Because people, I mean, if they just hear that, they'll go, what? Well, how do I do that? Well, first, let's just talk just for a second about what a competitive seller is, because Amazon changed their model right around 2014. They used to have what was called, well, I think they still call it this, but they've just changed what it is, the featured merchant program. So prior to 2014, you had to be the best Amazon seller based on metrics and some other things their algorithm looked at. And when they assigned you the featured merchant position, they basically gave you the buy box. So when anybody clicked on add to cart, you got credit for that sale. Okay. Well, that made it very difficult for any other Amazon seller to become the big guy. And Amazon saw that they were having a lot of products that were popular go out of stock because the big gorilla wasn't keeping it in stock, right? And prices were all over the place. And so they changed it to what they now call, and actually they still call it the featured merchant program. And I was actually, I'm going to go just left for 1 second here. I was the one that invented the term buy box. It was never called the buy box before I sat down with engineers and teams and marketers at Amazon and said, this is really a buy box. Not an add to cart button. It's a buy box because you're rotating sellers in and out of here now. And they went to that model where they're like, okay, let's get a little socialist for a second and share the wealth. And if everybody is the same, we're going to call that seller a competitive seller, and we will share the sales for that product amongst all the competitive sellers. And this is why you can have 20 sellers on a single product and have only 2 competitive sellers. This is why people look at that and say, that product's got 20 sellers. How could it possibly need another one? Because 18 of them are not competitive. They get no sales unless the 2 competitive sellers go away.
Right.
If you become the 3rd competitive seller, assuming that that product has enough sales and your share profit is significant that you'd want to be the 3rd competitive seller, that's how it works. You send the product down to FBA so that it's in the FBA program, which pretty much guarantees the fastest delivery time. You set up an algorithmic intelligent repricer, right, to maintain a price, not chase it or beat it or anything like that. And Amazon will rotate the sales between the competitive sellers and keep the non-competitive ones away.
Okay, so
now, these products, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, maybe you said this, but how do you become the competitive seller?
You make sure your product is at FBA, so you have fastest delivery time. You match, not beat, the lowest price of the FBA, which isn't the lowest overall price, but the lowest FBA price, right? And I think that's it. I think those are the 2.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And so and reviews as a seller, stuff like that, don't play into the algo at all. Okay.
No, because your merchandise is sitting at Amazon.
Sure.
It's like going to the bank and saying, hey, I have $1,000 in my savings account. Can I borrow $1,000? They're like, sure.
Yeah.
That's pretty safe. So that's how they treat that.
Gotcha.
So here's the thing though. These products are not what I call, they're not sexy products. I mean, a sexy product is something that, selling 20,000 units a month. Maybe it's in the top 100 list. Anybody can find these products. They're really easy, but there's no money in there. If you go to sell a real sexy product at Amazon and you try to source it, you're going to be like, there's no profit.
Yeah.
This distributor wants more than what it's selling for on Amazon. I can't make any money. Those are sexy products. So we use software to find the unsexy products, right? So let's say I go to a well-known pet distributor, a distributor of not pets, but of pet supplies, okay? And there's one called Bradley Caldwell. And the reason I mention them is because I've mentioned them so often, I've brought them so many new accounts that they're not taking any new accounts right now. So I can use them as okay. But you would go to a well-known distributor like Bradley Caldwell and open a wholesale account up with them, which can be done in minutes. And they will give you a list of everything they sell. They represent hundreds of brands that they're authorized to resell and thousands of SKUs. Matter of fact, Bradley Caldwell has between 18 and 20,000 products, okay? And they'll give you a list. And they'll say, here's 20,000 products. What would you like to buy? Well, at that point, I mean, back in the day, it was all manual. You had to look at every single product and go research it and crunch the numbers and make a buy or no buy decision. Those are the old days. Now we have technology, thank goodness, that makes this model possible. So we take the spreadsheet of all of the products and we run it through our proprietary software. The software goes to the marketplace and analyzes all of the price action and what things are selling for, BSRs. We apply a proprietary algorithm to determine monthly sales volume, all of the costs involved, including the cost of the product. And the software says, this is what you should buy. These are the highest profit, highest margin, highest ROI, fastest moving, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, your buying decision has become unemotional. It's all based on numbers, not, oh, I like blue widgets. I want to sell blue widgets. No, you got to stop thinking like that. I sell some really unsexy stuff. All right, really unsexy. Matter of fact, if I'm at a cocktail party, someone asks for some examples of products, I change the subject because
yeah,
it's just what we're talking about. But they're all profitable. They all make money.
Yeah.
I never see them. And I don't care what they are. It's all numbers based. So use the software to do the research and figure out what to buy. At that point, okay, and this is where I nerd out a little bit because I'm a numbers guy, all right? And I like, I like the strategies that allow me to use the math to figure out how to make money with a system, right? That's really what it is. If you can figure out how to make $1 of profit, $1, then all you have to do is figure out a system to do that 10,000 times a day.
Yeah.
Now you're making $10,000. This is what Amazon allows you to do now. All right. There's over 500 million products on Amazon.
Really?
There's 245,000 wholesale distributors in the United States. Now, that number sounds really big, but I've been doing this for a long time. And of the 245,000, as much research as we do, we've only really found about 200 that are worth dealing with. And they aren't 200 that you can really find doing a Google search. Most of them don't even have websites, right?
Right.
They're true distribution companies that want nothing to do with, selling online.
Sure.
So sometimes we go to trade shows and we talk to people and we figure out who these companies are. Like I said, we've been doing this for a long time. So the people that we work with, we just give them access to our database and say, here's the 200. You should go work.
Are you dealing with wholesalers primarily in the US or are you sourcing directly out of China yourself?
Only in the US. Whatever we're buying is sitting on a shelf in the United States, ready to ship within 24 hours. We don't deal with China at all. Now, a lot of brands obviously are made in China, India, Korea, Vietnam. We're not on that part of the distribution, chain. We're in the middle.
Yeah.
Now, you can deal with a brand. We do this all the time. I'll walk around a trade show and I'll find a small brand. And if they're early on in their life cycle and they don't have somebody to sell their stuff on Amazon, I'll make an exclusive deal with them. And that maybe they're having their stuff made in China, but I'm buying it from their warehouse, right, in the United States. Now, COVID kind of played havoc with this model in 2020 because, like we said, we had 7 years of growth in like 3 months, and the international supply chain was challenged in China. It wasn't that, you know, you had COVID in China where, yeah, some factories shut down, obviously, but they started right back up. And the problem was they couldn't make this stuff fast enough for the demand. Everybody was looking for toilet paper and paper towels. Do you know why? Because the raw materials to make paper towels take a long time to make, just the raw materials. The machines that make paper towels are 50 years old and only go so fast. So we had logistic issues abound in 2020. Everything's starting to get back to quote unquote the new normal now. But one thing that hasn't changed is there's constantly new products coming into the ecosystem. A lot of it is private labeled stuff, but you know, Johnson & Johnson isn't going to stop developing new products, right? Other large brands will constantly bring new products into the marketplace. And the wholesale distribution companies are the ones they'll deal with, right? The brand goes to the wholesale distribution company and says, you'll buy truckloads from us. And they're like, yep. And then we go to the wholesale distribution companies and say, hey, I'll buy a case of this from you, 24 in a case, 12 in a case. And that's what they're used to dealing with. They're not used to dealing with retail. So that's the need that we fill. When people say to me, well, you are a wholesaler? I go, no, I'm a retailer. I'm just an online retailer.
Sure.
But I prefer to call myself an online distribution company.
So when you're dealing with these wholesalers, and I know it's a question, I'm asking this on behalf of a lot of people listening, oh, this is interesting, right? The thing that appeals to people with drop shipping and private labeling and stuff like that is you don't have to buy inventory. So, I mean, there's low risk cash up front, which means there's a lot of people doing it. So I've always been a proponent, if you're going to do it, do what you're doing, right? You need to find products, you know. Now, that being said, when you're dealing with these companies, what are the minimum orders that you can put in? Like, how much money are you investing to get started?
I'm going to give you a specific answer, but before I do, I just want to make the point you kind of made is if you're flat out broke and have no resources, this isn't for you. You have to have resources. Does that mean cash in the bank? Not necessarily, but you can't. I get this all the time. I'm homeless and I need to make this work for me. I'm like, I can't work with you. We only work with people with resources. Okay. So having said that, I actually have, I'll get one more, I'll give a quick shameless plug. We have a tool at calculator.expertuniversity.com. It's a revenue projection tool. So you're able to say, I want to make X amount of dollars in net profit per month. You enter that, you play with a few of the variables, and the output number it gives you is the number of profitable products that you would have to have for sale at Amazon under the set parameters. All right. Once you then can figure out what the average cost is, you know, for those products, right? In real life, you can determine how much capital is needed to meet that monthly net income goal. Now, here's the good news. We train people in something that's called an inventory turn. We didn't invent that. It's just, it's a thing. It's how fast does this inventory turn over, right? And Amazon knows it's such an important number. They calculate it for you, and it's in your Seller Central account. They'll say, here's your average days on hand, and here's your turn number. My turn number average is 17.8. That means, and I'll use, if I buy $10,000 worth of inventory, at $10,000 worth of inventory will sell 17.8 times in the course of the year. I get my capital back. I put it out. So do I need $180,000 to buy that inventory? No, I need $10,000. It's the same $10,000 each time, turns. So when you're doing the research and deciding what it is you want to buy, you're also looking at the velocity of sales. And we tell people, don't send down more than 30 days of supply. Just don't. But I can get a good deal if I buy 6 months. Okay, go back to what I just said. Don't buy more than 30 days worth of supply. That's the way you keep your risk low. And if something does happen to a product, maybe you ended up buying it towards the end of its life cycle instead of the beginning, which is a common mistake. We show people how to avoid though. You're going to tie up some money. right? You're going to have dead inventory. There's only two things that hurt you in business, any business: dead inventory, money tied up in inventory that's not selling, and having expenses that are too high.
Yeah.
If you have those two things going against you, you're probably going to fail. So what you want to do is have as little tied up as possible, have as many turns as possible, and have low overhead. Now, in my case, once I got to the income level that I wanted, I outsourced 100% of my business, which means I took a percentage of my income and I dedicated it towards paying the right people to run my business for me, so that I could have the lifestyle I wanted. My lifestyle didn't include working on my business, every day. So now, as far as the core Amazon business goes, I'm a true CEO where I just look at my financials and look for red flags.
So this is an interesting model because it really splits the difference between, on one side, you've got the drop shipping private label. On the far side of that, which I think a lot of people get intimidated by, they're like, oh, I need to go to China and work with manufacturers and, bring a container of product over. And that's massively expensive and a lot of risk. And this is interesting because honestly, I've seen both models. I haven't heard this model, and this really splits the difference, right? They're products that are already here in the US, and you're not manufacturing them, and you're not even labeling them with your own brand per se.
Nope. You are a true distribution company.
Interesting.
It's a legitimate company that has value that can be resold, and it happens all the time without owning any products. Let me ask you this real quick. On an average private label play, what would you say that your number of inventory turns are across a 12-month period?
On a private label play. So basically you're private labeling it and putting your brand on something?
Right. How many inventory turns would you guess the average private label brand has in a year?
God, I wouldn't even know where to start.
Two.
Because they have to order that much.
You got to order 6 months worth and float it across the ocean.
And I get it. I mean, I'm in the, I've got 40 different health supplements brands, and I mean, I'll buy, because you get discounts the more you buy. We'll buy 50,000 units at a time. I mean, I have established channels, so I'm confident in doing that, but it's a big upfront cost.
What's really cool about this, and by the way, just to make this fine point, I'm not against private label. I have private label brands of my own. I'm against private label being the first thing somebody does on Amazon because of the higher cash outlay, the higher risk, and the lack of inventory turns. Now, if somebody understands those risks and are very well capitalized, and they want to take a swing at the plate to try to get a home run on a private label brand, go for it. Okay. But the average person is not in that situation, right? They're just not. Yeah. So I tell them to start with the wholesale model. But I love my private label brands. They've been around for, over 10 years. And we actually sell more on our own website than we do through Amazon. Amazon's just kind of a way to introduce people to that brand. But the cool thing about wholesale distribution is, so let's say a product sells out. You buy a 30 days worth, it sells out, and it's time. Your reordering software says, hey, you need to reorder this product. And you look at it and you go, that brought me 22% margin. I did some research today. I ran a file right through my software, and here's a product I found that's 28% margin. If you only have, and it's the same inventory cost, if you only have enough to buy one, what do? You buy the one that's 28% margin. Yeah. So you're constantly refining the returns that you're getting on the same amount of money. Yeah. It's like a smelting pot. And that's why I call it a game. It's just a big game. Whoever knows the rules, has the best strategies, experience, they're going to be better at this game, and they're going to make more money.
Fascinating. Yeah. No, it's been a really interesting conversation because it's again, like I said, it's a different model, and it splits the difference between the two models that I see that are out there. And I agree. a private label or even manufacturing your own stuff, I mean, that's a fantastic model, but you got to be well capitalized to make it happen. And obviously the right products and stuff like that. But all right, look, I always shoot for 45 minutes. We're at an hour, and that's awesome. That means I've enjoyed this conversation, and you know, it's been refreshing to talk to somebody with a different perspective on the Amazon thing. So I want to wrap up, but before we do, you know, you've mentioned some interesting tools. Obviously, you guys are teaching people how to do this as well as doing it. Where do people go to connect with you and find out more about this?
The best place would be wholesaleproductmastery.com. Right now, for I don't know how much longer we're going to do this, but we're giving people actually free access to our training program. So they can literally sign up for free. You don't enter a credit card number or anything, and get in there and poke around and see the quality of the training and pick up some concepts. And then if you want to continue, you know, past that, we can have a conversation. But that's free right now, and it's the fastest way to get in there and see what's going on, see if it makes sense to you. Because we kind of went quick. And we hit a lot of, you know, we were like skipping across mountaintops. We didn't really get to deep dive like I love to do. But to your point, you know, I could talk for days on this because there's a lot to say. And that's why there's
yeah. And I mean, look, and for the listeners, I mean, if this is something that's interesting you, I mean, we can only skip across the peaks in an hour, right? But I got what I wanted out of this interview because I was curious as to what your model was. Because there are lots of models out there, and I like what I hear. I mean, you know, you're upfront, you're honest. Yeah, you got to have some money to get this thing going, but it works. So,
you do it the right way, you're going to get the same results of everybody else doing it the right way. So you got to figure out what the right way is, and just take action. And the people that do that, I mean, we have thousands of people in our members only Facebook group that you can get in there and interact and network with, and they happily put up their screenshots. It's just a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, Todd, thank you so much for taking the time today, and I hope we get to do this again. I've really enjoyed this.
I do too, because I was serious when I said I think we would get along and enjoy a day together. So, Derek, thank you very much. It was actually my pleasure. Anytime. Well, and now for our listeners, guys, I hope you took something away from this. Like I said, it was refreshing. It was a different take than what you see every day on Amazon. And I think we've dispelled, Todd definitely dispelled some of the misleading things that are going on out there on Amazon. But as I always say, the only way this is going to work for you is back to some of the mindset stuff we were talking about. And that is to actually take it and use it, apply it, take action with it, quit signing up for course after course to get that dopamine hit and think you're doing something. Just take action. So that's a wrap for this episode. I hope you guys got something out of it, and I'll see you guys again real soon. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to another info-packed episode of the Project Ignite podcast with Derek Gale.
Any links mentioned, along with an entire transcript of this episode, can be found at projectignite.com/podcast.
And to make sure you never miss another episode, go to iTunes or SoundCloud now and subscribe.